The lunatic is on the grass. The lunatic is on the grass.
All right, everybody. Good morning. Thank you for tuning in to this week's Wheatley Report, where we discuss the legal cannabis and medicinal marijuana industries. And as you know, I always like to get started with a little bit of mood music. So, what could be better than classic Pink Floyd? The lunatic is on the grass. So, is he literally on the grass, or is he metaphorically on the grass? Or maybe he's doing both. Well, anyway, we've got a lot to talk about, so let's get into it. All right, so these are some themes that we focus on. Kind of the. All right, we have a little trouble here. All right, so these are some of the things that are going on. Widespread social acceptance. It's inevitably going to be legal federally, and that's a big thing to talk about because a lot of people are on the sidelines waiting to see if this is going to be legal federally. I think that it's inevitable. And frankly, I think things are going along way faster than I thought they would. And we'll talk about that a little bit more farther on in the presentation. But I wouldn't be surprised within a year or two if this is legal federally because some big players now are getting involved. And when they want to make money, they lobby for law changes. And there you have it. So obviously, people are aware of recreational cannabis. One of the areas where I want to focus on is medicinal, because this is really a biotech play, and there's going to be some huge opportunities. There already are huge opportunities, and the area's already shown a lot of promise and a lot of success already in curing different ailments, or alleviating different ailments at the very least. And the ancillary opportunities where a lot of opportunities are going to be big opportunities, because it's the Levi. Think of the Levi Strauss model. Levi Strauss sold jeans to the miners, and whether you were a good miner or a bad miner, you still needed to buy jeans. All right, so I was looking around at some ancillary opportunities and doing some research, and I was looking into these vaporizers, which seem to be everywhere. And the reason why I was looking is actually kind of unfortunate. It's because my young children are talking about how in their middle school there's all these, all the tough kids or the kids from the not so good homes or whatever are vaping. So this is not just in marijuana play, but it is a tobacco play as well, as people try to get off smoking traditionally and do things that are less bad for you. So the trouble with these vaporizer companies is there's really just 100 of them, and they seem to all buy their parts from like the same few places in China. But I'm doing more research into it. There's got to be something there somewhere, and I'll let you know if we find something. I did think that this was kind of funny here. So this lady, Lisa Heron, said that they made this vaporizer that you can actually use in the water, or use in the shower. So people like to vape in the bathroom. They're hiding from their kids. They're hiding from their wives. I assume they're hiding from their husbands too. So what if you could vape in the shower? So that struck me as kind of amusing, so I thought I would bring it up. Before we look at the charts, some charts, we have featured this week's player, who has to be Elon Musk, who infamously was smoking marijuana on television somewhere. So he's shown a couple other erratic behaviors recently. What I have here is his quote from April Fool's Day, when he said that Tesla was going bankrupt. He tweeted this. It says, despite intense efforts to raise money, including a last-ditch mass sale of Easter eggs, we are sad to report that Tesla has gone completely and totally bankrupt. So bankrupt you can't believe it. Now, if I had seen that, I would assume that he got hacked, and someone put that there to be funny, so I wouldn't have taken it seriously anyway. But in lieu of recent things that we've seen, maybe at the time that he typed this, he thought it was true. Also, he called that, for whatever reason, I don't know why, but one of the divers who saved the soccer team, those kids in Thailand, he called a pedophile. Then he had the infamously on the conference call where he said he was going to take the company private, and now the SEC is investigating him over it because they think it might have been a way for him to get back at short sellers. So the guy is a genius, obviously. Sometimes geniuses are trouble. Saw this weekend, and I'm just going to bring up this guy's name because he's one of the greatest geniuses of all time. And if you do research, or if you're reading about artificial intelligence, you're going to hear his name, Kurt Gödel, because he pioneered a lot of these things. So his first incompleteness theorem states that for any self-consistent recursive axiomatic system powerful enough to describe the arithmetic of natural numbers, there are true propositions about the naturals that cannot be proved from the axioms. Now, I have no idea what the hell that means, because this guy's probably got more brains in his pinky than I have in my whole body. But when I was just thinking of troubled geniuses when I saw that thing about Elon Musk. Now, he later on in his life thought that the whole world was trying to poison him, and he would only get food from his wife. And when his wife went into the hospital and couldn't make food for him anymore, or make dinner for him anymore, he literally starved to death. He just stopped eating, and his official cause of death was malnutrition and inanition and a personality disturbance. So here's another great genius, Alan Turing, who if you study artificial intelligence, you'll know a lot about it, hear a lot about, because he came up with the Turing machine, and it's considered the first model of a general purpose computer. And he actually broke the Nazis' codes during World War II and saved lots of lives. And a lot of experts say that he shortened the war, but he was homosexual, so he was prosecuted under laws they had back then, the La Bouriche Amendment or whatever there. So anyway, another genius who lived a very troubled life, and he committed suicide when he was 42 years old. All right, so now let's get into some of the news now and talk about some serious business. So Aurora Cannabis reported yesterday, and it caught my eye because it was a blowout number. Analysts were looking for a loss of 3 cents, excuse me, and it came in at a profit of 40 cents. So that is a huge beat. So I'm going to look a little bit more into that. Then there's some big events going on. Coca-Cola said that they're in discussions with Aurora to develop. Actually, they didn't say it. They're said to be. They say they don't comment on things like this. But Aurora Cannabis, they've spoken with them to talk about developing beverages that are infused with CBD, which is one of the non-psychoactive components found in cannabis. So I don't know what that's supposed to do. But also Altria Group said that they are starting to look into opportunities in the cannabis market. So when I was putting this together, I thought that was kind of funny, right? Because marijuana has these like negative connotations, and I'm certainly not saying it's good for you, but I wonder who's killed more people over the last 60 or 70 years, marijuana or Coca-Cola and Philip Morris, which is Altria Group, obviously. I mean, the biggest health problem in our country is morbid obesity, and Coca-Cola obviously is a product that is not conducive to losing weight. So I would be willing to bet that refined sugar is responsible for a lot of deaths. They say it feeds cancer cells and it makes you obese. Altria Group, obviously, they make cigarettes, and there's no argument there. So anyway, just goes to show you, marijuana was originally made illegal for social reasons, and we're going to get to that later. Also, adding so-called legitimacy to the group, Leon Cooperman and some of the other hedge fund heavyweights have been starting to look into investing. And these firms are so big that they can't really take stakes in these little companies, but they're taking stakes in the bigger companies, the pharmaceuticals, for instance, that are already in existence, or already, legitimate companies that are branching out into this area. Last month, the Constellation's brands invest in Canopy Growth deal was really big, and Goldman Sachs and Bank of America. Bank of America financed it and Goldman Sachs advised, so that shows that Wall Street big boys are getting into it now. So this is what I'm saying about, I just think this is, the road to legality is coming along quicker than most people thought. I mentioned this last time, but state banking regulators are getting together to lobby Congress because they want banks to be able to do business, obviously, with the marijuana industry, because they're starting to see that it's losing against social sigma and there's profit opportunities. This is one of the ETFs I look at. I just thought this was kind of interesting. It's probably not a big deal, but they've decided to switch custodians and administrators and transfer agents, and that's basically the people that do the paperwork and inform the investors and the clients and custody the assets and so forth. But apparently they are changing because U.S. Bancorp was wondering, well, they were concerned because of legal and reputational risks. Okay. So whatever, they're probably going to be missing out. They should read my report here and learn that the social stigma has disappeared. So October 17th coming up, it's going to be legal in Canada. My guess is that a lot of these stocks have run up ahead of that, and I would think that they're going to come back in. I'm not making a recommendation, but you got a lot of retail investors invest in these things. A friend of mine told me he walked by a construction site and he heard a couple of the construction guys there talking about buying some of these cannabis equities. You're going to see when we look at the charts that a lot of these things are pretty much exactly where they were in January. And if you remember, there was a huge run up towards the end of the last year because who knows, maybe certain funds needed to get them in by the end of the year. But a lot of these things peaked in January and then sold off dramatically right after. Now there's differences because back then you didn't have these, what I would call legitimizing stories. When you have Coca-Cola, Altria Group, Leon Cooperman, and others, heavyweight hedge fund guys getting in, that's could make it different this time. I thought this was kind of funny that High Times, the magazine, wanted to raise $50 million to go public, and they basically raised $5 million, and they needed to get to $17.2 million. So I think the place is probably being run by a bunch of stone hippies that don't know how to operate a business. Because with a brand recognition like that and a brand name like that, you figure someone would be willing to invest in them. Someone smart, I should say. All right, so let's look at some of these stocks. Aurora Cannabis, very overbought, but you can see it's approaching this 14 level. That's around where it topped out in January. So this has a big market on the industry. Sapria, you can see there was huge volume going in here. So I think some institutional money got in here, but the volume's been drying up. Forming a little triangle consolidation pattern here, which means it's going to either make a move one way or the other when this thing comes to an end, typically. And a move that's a tradable move. It's pretty hard to see on the chart here, but like from here to here, that's a 10% move. So if you read the traditional technical analysis work, symmetrical triangle is going to break one way or the other. It only happens 2/3 of the time. It's not infallible. Kronos Group, you can see, has been trading frenzied like over the last few months. I think it's pretty interesting here. Yesterday's close was right, like right here. So, well, they see this as, oh wait, don't let this distract you. That's 8 means down here. This is what it was the top through February. But this level here is around 1150, I guess. So that's pretty much exactly where it closed yesterday. So that's what I mean. These things are testing levels from last January. This is that ETF that I just mentioned that had some custodial and operational issues. You can see this thing is peaked out right around 40 in January. That's right where we are now. The Semler Therapeutics just kind of trading sideways around 375. This GW Pharmaceuticals had an interesting move. It held this 140 level, which we've been talking about. Had rallied dramatically. I believe there was some news, some earnings or something. So now short term, I'm looking for support around this 163 level because that was the top here. So I would imagine after a move like this thing will kind of consolidate above 163 before it either gets back into a leg up or breaks this level and gets right back down to the 140 level. This is the other popular ETF. You can see it's testing resistance right at 20, which is where it was in January. This Innovative Industrial Properties making new highs. A little bit overbought though, so even though it's still in an uptrend, I would assume we'll see a little bit of consolidation there. This instance got back above this important $8 level I was watching. So since then it's been trending higher, slightly. Kush Bottles trending higher. It's overbought here. You can see it's above its Bollinger Band. So overbought. And I would assume there's going to be some resistance around 670. That's where the top was in May and June. Scott's Miracle-Gro. You can see that this 79.50 level is important. 76.50 level is important. 76.50 was the top here. With support here. This thing goes down again or keeps going down, I'd look for a little bit of support there. You can see this 79.50 level was important here and here when it broke through it. So yeah, this set this off. This was earnings. And got up here and got overbought and reverted. I don't know. I don't trade this thing. It's too hard for me to follow. Or too hard for me to pick good levels on it because it's not really just related to traders that are dominating some of these other little stocks. This is more traded by big companies and big institutions. All right, so Weed, Canopy Growth. This thing more than doubled in less than a month. Since then, it's been trading sideways around 70. So just keep an eye on that. All right, so that's it. A quick look at. Time to get into our interesting fun facts. I found this picture. I thought it was pretty funny. It's an old store, and you see they got the big cannabis leaf here because between 1850 and 1942, marijuana was available at local general stores and drugstores and pharmacies, and it was used to treat nausea, rheumatism, and labor pains. Pretty similar to now. And this is what I was mentioned before: is that marijuana is not illegal due to health reasons. If alcohol was invented today, it'd be illegal. If cigarettes were invented today, they'd be illegal, right? Because they are obviously very bad for you. But when marijuana first became illegal, it was due to different reasons. As a matter of fact, the temperance movement, the people that tried to get people from not drinking alcohol, suggested marijuana as an alternative to alcohol. So during the 19th century, cannabis was the term that was used to refer to the plant, and that will probably become the term again, and I didn't even know this until I put this presentation together. Anti-American sentiment, it was what made people started calling it marijuana, to draw negative attention to the drugs used by Mexicans. So, you know that song La Cucaracha, La Cucaracha, La Cucaracha? That means the cockroach, and then the next line has something to do with fume marijuana. So it's like the cockroach smokes marijuana. So that's it's a song that everyone knows, but no one really knows what the meaning is. So then when Mexico had its revolution in 1910, this led to a wave of Mexican immigration to states throughout the American Southwest, and people were prejudiced and racist, just as they are now. And then by 1937, the Marijuana Tax Act got invoked, and there was also Henry Anslinger, who we mentioned last presentation as the play of the week. He was really racist, and he was the head of the first DEA, so he said out a lot of propaganda, and that movie Reefer Madness and so forth and so on. But the point is it was not illegal due to health concerns. It was illegal due to social concerns. All right, so that's it. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch up with you next week.